We're back out here once again, and today I've got 3 reasons why bright red may actually be the worst color you can pick in the pre-spawn and your early spring fishing. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Oh, there we are. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's a nice one. Stay down, stay down. Oh, there he goes. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And if you ask any angler across the country during the pre-spawn and the early spring, they'll always tell you the same thing about what color you need to make sure that you have tied on. It doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, whether you're in the deep south or whether you're in the northeast or even as far west as California. You'll always hear the same thing because it's drummed into our head year in and year out. It's something like this. This is a 6th Sense Quake 70. And if you're fishing especially something like a lipless or other type of crankbait, well, you see how loud and bold that color scheme is. It's really pretty. It's a very colorful bait, but that red is very bold. This is a very bold colored bait. And something else like this square bill, this H2O Express, it's also very bold. It's a deeper red. It's got some reflective red flake in there. And this makes a stunning and striking image under the water. Now, I've got 3 reasons today why I don't like throwing those bold reds during the pre-spawn and into the early spring because, well, they just don't prove very effective for me. Now, the first thing, the very first reason why I really don't care for reds is, well, I don't catch fish of any size. When I'm able to catch fish, and it's pretty rare, I always find that I'm catching those very small, aggressive fish. Those fish in the half pound, 3/4 pound, and sometimes, maybe if I'm lucky, a pound. But those fish that I'm catching with those red types of crankbaits, they generally tend to be on the much smaller size. I don't know if I've ever caught a fish that has been of any type of weight, 2.5 pounds or more on a red crankbait. Now, this may just be me, but again, we form our preferences over what we have confidence in and our personal experience, right? If I go out to the lake and whenever I'm fishing, I feel like I'm going to catch little bitty dinks, well, I always end up catching little bitty dinks. It always seems to play that way. So the very first reason, and for me it's a crucial and important reason, is because, well, I catch dinks and I really don't like that. Now the second reason is, well, you've always heard that red is important because those crawfish are waking up and those bass are voracious during the pre-spawn. And that's true. Those bass are hungry and those crawfish are coming up out of their holes, out of their little mud pits that they've made to hibernate or rest during the winter. And the bass are very, very hungry. The bass are willing to feed. They're looking to feed on a variety of prey species, including crawfish. But the main problem is crawfish aren't bright red when they come out of those holes. They're muddled, they're brown, they're green. They've got little hints of red possibly here and there, but for the most part, they are dark in color. They do not resemble at all the color of those crankbaits and plastics that we are told to throw. Now, they will get that way, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit, but for the most part, the baits that you're looking at, the baits that you are told to throw, are not very representative at all of the colors that you're going to see those crawfish be in the early springtime. They don't molt until after, usually in my waters anyway, those crawfish are not in molting phase until after they've mated and after the bass have already spawned. So after the bass have spawned, when we move into the post-spawn, then you're going to see those crawfish start to molt, in which that's their way of growing. That's the only way that they can grow, is by breaking out of their shell, and shedding it off, almost like a snake does, right? A snake has to shed its skin. Well, a crawfish has to do the same thing. That's the only way they can grow. They've got to get rid of that entire shell, and they have to have a new one come out. And when that shell is new, that's when it's bright red. And more importantly, that's when it's softer. It has not hardened up yet, which those bass know this, and they know that that can make an easier meal. And that can make an easier meal for those bass who are constantly looking for an easy meal. I mean, who isn't looking for an easy meal, right? But being able to find an easier meal means you've got more chance of success and more chance of survival, which is, like we've said before, bass are lazy. It's great for them to be lazy and use minimal effort. So if they can find some fresh red crawfish, that means that they've just molted, and those shells may not be as hard, may not be as durable as they are later on in the year. Yes, those bass will definitely go after it. And that's when this color can come into play. But that's well after the spawn. That is most definitely in the post-spawn. And for a place like us here in South Mississippi, we are already toward April and halfway through April and into May when this actually begins to become a player. And if, we tend to move things a lot more early than the rest of the country because we're a lot farther south and it gets hot a lot quicker. So obviously, if it's not going to be until after the spawn here in South Mississippi, where we're talking late March, early April, then for the rest of the country, April is probably going to be about the earliest that you want to throw those real red colors. Now, lastly, I don't like to throw red is because those bass are not just feeding up on crawfish. They are feeding up on so many different prey species. And one of the favorite things that I like to focus on, well, are two actually, and that is sunfish and shad/shiners. So I will throw a lot of these different types of color combinations. This is a Sixth Sense Crush, and this is a Berkley Pit Bull. I don't even think they make these anymore, but they have I think they're called the Square Bull now. But either way, this sunfish pattern on this particular square bill, this thing is money for me during the early part of the year, during the pre-spawn, during the beginning parts of the spawn, and even after into the post-spawn when those females have deposited their eggs and they're coming back off of the bed and they're willing to eat again at that point. After they've deposited their eggs and they're moving back out of the pockets, well, they're going to be looking for easy snacks along the way. And sunfish, especially something that would be bite-sized like this, something along this size right here, this is probably a 2.5 size square bill, but something like this would be perfect. This would be actually something that they would easily and quickly go after and be more than willing to, try to scarf it down real quick. As well as something like this Crush, this Sixth Sense Crush. And this is about the same size again. This is about a 2.5 size square bill. And these get down to, and I don't know, depending upon the brand, some of them get down to about 7 feet, some of them get down to about 5 feet, some of them only get down to about 3 feet, depending on the brand. But again, these color combinations, something like this shad version, or I can also use it as a shiner. This is another one that catches a lot of fish for me during the pre-spawn and in the late spawn going on into the post-spawn. These are going to be some of the things that I'm going to be using. So instead of something like this, I'm going to use something more like this if I'm targeting bass that are feeding on crawfish. And this is a Googan clutch. And these are about, half ounce, 5/8, somewhere in that area. And this works tremendously well. These brown colors are a great substitute for that garish red, because these are more like what those craw are looking like during the pre-spawn. Now, if I want something that's maybe got a little bit more subtlety to it, then I'm going to be throwing, like we've talked about before, this other little pit bull. This is a smaller one, but this is that peanut butter and jelly color. This is that color that I really, really like. So even if I'm using like a plastic craw, like a Rage craw or something like that, I love those peanut butter craws on my jigs because that's what works. A green type of craw with those bluegill types of colored skirts, like I talked about in the last video. Those are also money. But for targeting those bass that have, they have a taste for crawfish, those crawfish that have just come out, well, something like this peanut butter and jelly can be very, very effective. Now, if I do want to have a little flash with it, if I do want to have something that's going to stand out in the water, well, then I'm going to use something like this, 6 cents. This is another Quake, but this one here, as you can see, it's got a loud color pattern to it, but it's much more of that shad shiner. It's got that imitation going on. And I'm telling you what, this one right here during the pre-spawn, this joker catches some bigs, and I'm talking 6, 7, and 8 pounders during the pre-spawn, because in my area, well, those bait are balled up into really big clouds, and I find that those bass are not necessarily feeding on crawfish as much as they're feeding on that balled up bait fish, which for a lot of the time is easier for them because they can just get these bait fish backed up against the bank, which is why, they use the shallows. They use that as another tool. It's almost like a wall that they use to back those shad and shiner up against for easier feeding. And something cranked along structure like laydowns or a rubble pile or something like that, something cranked along those areas and varying your retrieve can be exceedingly effective. These things right here, like I said, if I'm throwing during the pre-spawn, compared this to this one's catching me the tanks. This one, I'll catch a few, but it's not going to catch me anything of size. Now, another one that I really like to throw during the pre-spawn is Sexy Shad, right? This Strike King Red Eye Shad. These things are amazing simply because of how well they fall and how well they move in the water. They've got a very nice erratic pattern. That's why everybody knows a Strike King Red Eye Shad is a money lipless, especially during the pre-spawn. But if you're using them in the pre-spawn and the early spring, try using it with a Sexy Shad pattern. I'm serious. Even from the bank, you don't need electronics. Those bait fish are clouded up. They're balled up. The bass have got them balled up. And this thrown right in those areas where those bait fish are. And like I said, it's going to be in areas like along vegetation seams. If you can find a laydown, throw along that laydown and work this in that area, and you will be surprised at exactly how effective and how nice the fish are that you'll be catching with a Sexy Shad type of bait. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be this particular one. It doesn't have to be a Red Eye Shad. It can be any of your favorite lipless types of cranks. It can be something like a Bill Lewis or a Cotton Cordell or whatever. But this color right here, I'm telling you what, that really gets it done for me in the spring. So there you have it. My 3 reasons why I don't like bright red during the pre-spawn and the early spring. Number 1, it catches small fish. Number 2, the crawfish aren't even red at that point. They're brown and green. Number 3, the bass are usually feeding on shad and shiner and sunfish, so they're not even looking at craw at that particular time because those species are easier and more abundant for the bass to go after. So I implore you, think about it, try it, change things up. Sometimes it's good to go against the grain and shift the paradigm just a little bit. You never know, you might just find a new type of confidence color and a new type of confidence bait where you never thought one would be. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.